to the UIAAA Connection podcast. GoFan and VNN are proud to be the exclusive sponsor of the UIAAA Connection. Now a combined company, GoFan and VNN provide a seamless integration for digital ticketing and athletic websites. Direct your fans to one place for all your athletic events, communications, and tickets to home and away games. Thank you to GoFan and VNN for their exclusive sponsorship of the UIAAA Connection.
Welcome back to another edition of the UIAAA Connection. I'm your host, Mark Hutch Hunter. Today we have our special guest, Jake Atwood, Director of Athletics at Emery High School. Welcome to the podcast, Jake.
Thanks, Hutch. I'm glad to be here. I've heard a lot of your interviews and glad you asked me to be a part of it.
Perfect. Let's have you begin by sharing with our audience worldwide now, worldwide audience, where you grew up, where you went to high school, college, your first job, etc.
So I'm a small town guy. I'm athletic director here at Emery High School. And this is where I went to high school. Grew up in Huntington, Utah, just about 10 minutes from here. And anyway, went to Emery High School, went to college at UVU, and then from there to BYU, Hawaii, and then worked at Snow College for a little while, and then came back home, was a recreation director here at Emery County. And then my wife talked me into getting into education. So taught at a middle school for about 6 years and coached. And from there, got the job here at Emery High School and love it. And anyway, I've got a wife of 18 years and 2 kids. One is a sophomore and he's a boy, plays football and swim and soccer. And then my daughter is a freshman and she just finished up her freshman year of volleyball here at Emery High. Live in Orangeville now, just about 2 minutes from here. So it's a nice, easy trip home every day. And yeah, loving every minute of it.
So Orangeville, suburban, so what's the name I'm thinking of? It's like the suburbs. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So Emery High is here in Castledale, Utah, and it's a small town itself. And Orangeville is just a couple minutes away, even smaller. I think we've got about maybe 2,300 people in our town. And like I said, I grew up in Huntington in a small town. My wife's from a small town, and we love it out here.
Perfect. Let me ask you a follow-up only because my granddaughter, so this would have been, I want to say, well, a year ago. No, it would be more than a year. It would be a year and a half ago, finished up. So she went to BYU and just went there for the 1 year, got her associate's degree. And she loved it there.
Man, I tell you what, I was there for 2 years and I loved every second of it. I fell in love with the culture. That's where I met my wife. She's from there. So I married her and brought her back to Utah. But man, I tell you what, it was an experience that not a lot of people get to have. And to be able to say I was able to live there and go to school at BYU Hawaii, and it was great. I loved every minute of it. We've been back a few times since we graduated, and took our kids back for the first time a couple of years ago, and they loved it just as much as we did. And my son's already making plans to go to college out there someday.
Perfect. So if I have my calendar right, you're probably 10 years-ish after Sean Bradley graduated. Is that right? Or is it even longer than that?
Yeah, that's about right. I think he graduated in 90, if I remember correct, and I graduated in 2000. So I know his family real well. My brother-in-law went to school with him and played with him, and I know his family. I've never met him myself, but know his family real well.
Let's have you talk for a minute about youth sports activities in Castledale, Huntington, or even that area. Were they plentiful? Were they hard because it wasn't such a big? Did you end up playing road games, like a big road game would be up to Price, or maybe into to Southern Utah County? Talk about that.
Yeah, when I was growing up, there wasn't a lot. There was junior jazz. I remember playing junior jazz a little bit. Soccer wasn't big, but yeah, Price is the big town, down here. So we would go to Price a lot and play. But for the most part, I was thinking about this as I was reading through your questions. I didn't grow up in a big sports family, so that wasn't pushed a lot. It wasn't in the forefront of what we were doing, but it's something that I fell in love with individually. I remember, in the late 80s, early 90s, I remember being a basketball nut, and I could name 7 players from every team in the NBA. Nowadays,
Yeah.
people, the teams and players move so much. I couldn't name you 4 players on the Jazz right now. So,
There you go.
but anyway, yeah. So, and when I was little, travel leagues weren't huge either. So you just kind of did what was local here, and junior jazz is the biggest thing. I remember playing little league football a little bit. But yeah, as far as where my sports came from, it was a lot of TV and watching, the Braves on TBS and the Cubs on WGN and stuff like that, and following basketball. Basketball has always been my favorite, so I followed that more than anything else. But yeah, not a lot down here. It's getting more and more availability down here, and now there's a lot of players, and my kids included, with these travel volleyball teams and travel soccer teams, that we make a trip to Utah, Salt Lake County once a week for travel games to make sure our kids get the best opportunity they have.
Wow.
Yeah.
Talk about Little League football for a minute, because I'm thinking if you've got a team in Castledale, you probably have the same age group team in Price.
Yeah.
I can't imagine. Well, I guess in the fall you could go over the mountain to the west and get down into Manti or possibly Ephraim.
Yeah.
But where
So,
where else are your games going to be?
So we didn't get a lot of games, Little League football. We didn't travel a lot. So I don't know how familiar you are with Emery County, but our school is we're about 640 students, I think,
Right.
this year. And that's comprised of about 6 or 7 small towns, so from one
Right.
end of our county, on the south end, there's a town called Emery, and on the north end there's a town called Elmo, and they're probably a good 45 minutes away, so we've got all these small towns, and we would try to round up 15 kids to make a football team, and you're playing offense and defense and special teams and everything else. And really, the Cleveland Elmo team would play the Huntington team, which would also play the Castledale Orangeville team, so we beat up on each other a lot just because there weren't a lot of teams to play. So we would play everybody 3 times and get as many games as we can. And we look back at some of our friends now and talk about the battles that we had, because we had a lot, because we'd play the same team 3 or 4 times in a football season.
Oh, I'm sure. So remind me now. So Emery's got to be down close to I-70, doesn't it?
So we're about, we're
not Emery, the high school. I'm talking about
Emery Town.
The town.
Yeah, Emery Town. I'll bet it's probably 20 minutes from I-70. So yeah, I would say about 20 miles, but it's probably closer to I-70 than it is Emery High School.
Yeah, it is. So for you, it's Huntington's probably what? Well, so is Cleveland? Is those kids go to Emery?
Yeah. So the only people that don't go to Emery are the people that live in Green River. So Green River is part of Emery County, but they're so far away that they have their own high school out there. But yeah, so Cleveland, Elmo, Orangeville, Emery, they all bus to Emery High School. So a lot of travel.
Because I can't imagine if you had to, for example, if you played a game against Green River, you can't just go east.
No,
you have to go north up to Price, and to Wellington and down, or you have to go down to I-70 and across that way. And that's got to be, my goodness, I'm guessing minimum hour, 15 minutes, maybe longer.
Yeah. So from Green River to Price is about an hour and 15 minutes. So we've got, obviously they're our closest high school, Carbon High School. So we have a good rivalry with them. We've had a good rivalry with the San Pete schools because we play them a lot. There's there's a central league for soccer and other things that we compete with. And the thing I like, all us small towns, we take care of each other and try to get games where we can and when we can. And we're all willing to travel because we have no other choice.
Exactly. Talk about the mentors in your life for a minute, parents, coaches, bosses, teachers that had an effect on you and where you wound up.
Sure. So I'd say my grandpa, he instilled in me that work ethic of, don't quit till the job's done, get up early. I remember following him around when I was 4, 5, 6 years old. And he was just a carpenter, a do-it-yourself guy. And I remember getting up 6:30 with him and working. So that's where I got my work ethic from. As far as my professional mentors and stuff, I worked really, two of my best friends in the industry are Ray Stewart, I don't know if you know him, and Quincy Lewis, the AD at Lehigh right now. So I was able to coach with Quincy for a couple of years and met him in my college days, and Ray Stewart, and they both helped me get my first coaching jobs. And Quincy's put in a good word for me more times than I can even count. And in fact, when I got this job, I went up and met with him just to get the ins and outs of, register my athlete and
Sure.
the UIAAA handbook and all that stuff. So he's helped me out a lot. Him and Ray Stewart professionally are the ones that have definitely gotten me where I am, and couldn't have done it without them. But both of those guys, Ray coached at UVU when I first met him. He was an assistant with the boys there, and then he more recently was an assistant for BYU, the girls team there with Coach Judkins. And so we've stayed pretty tight. And then Quincy, I think everybody knows Quincy from Lone Peak and all the state championships. And so, yeah, I've met him at Utah Valley as well. So two guys
When
that
he
if
was
I
there. So this was obviously after he went to college at Wagner.
Yeah, this was after he
Long
went to college at Wagner. He was at UVU when I met him. He was at Southern Utah for a little while, and then when he got the job at Lone Peak, Ray Stewart knew him, knew Quincy, and then Ray Stewart helped me get the job at Lone Peak as Quincy's assistant. So I was able to be there when he won his first state championship with Jackson Emery and those guys. And man, I'll tell you, that's a time in my life I'll never forget. And there's nothing quite like winning a state championship. So that was a great time. And then he just propelled me on my coaching career, and just helped me a lot throughout my professional life.
Yeah, I met Quincy when he was just Quincy. Only I say, well, and you may not know this, but his father, Tim, is the only one I'm aware of that has won a state championship in boys basketball and girls basketball. And he won that girls title at Jordan. He actually, I had stepped down. We had one coach for 1 year, and then Tim came in with the sophomores that I had that were seniors, and won that state title. And so that's back in, oh my goodness, 32 years ago. It's like back in 91.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time with Tim. Quincy and I became such good friends that I've been down. His dad lives down in Hatch, Utah now, down by Bryce Canyon.
Right.
And so I went down with Quincy and his family once or twice, and hiked and stayed in their house there, and got to hear all the stories of all the old players he coached and state championships. And yeah, he's fascinating to listen to.
That's awesome. Let me ask you a little bit of a personal question, Jake. What's your biggest failure or disappointment in life, and what did you learn from it?
I was looking at this question earlier, and I was talking with my wife about it, and it's a hard one. That's a great question. I think what I came up with, so a little bit more about my background, is I coached at Lone Peak for 2 years, and then I was trying to finish my schooling, and because of an injury in my middle school days, I didn't really. The only high school sport that I played was golf. I wasn't able to play basketball or football, so I golfed. But like I said, basketball was my first love. So I always wanted to coach. I was a nerd, I mean, like I said, I could name a bunch of players on NBA teams, and I grew up a big BYU fan. I remember recording games and watching them and breaking down the film before BYU would play San Diego State for the second time, So anyway, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to coach college basketball. So I anyway, I coached at Lone Peak for a couple years, and then Quincy helped me get to BYU Hawaii, and I went there and coached with Coach Wagner for a couple years as a student assistant while I finished my my bachelor's degree. So went there and coached. While I was there, he told me, that he was looking to retire soon, and he's like, you should get your master's degree and maybe you could coach here one day. And so anyway, long story short, got my master's degree, and BYU Hawaii did away with their athletics program. So anyway, after I left BYU Hawaii, I got a job at Snow College and was coaching there with Michael Oslin. I coached there for 5 years, the men's program.
So it's after John. This is after Johnny went down to St. George.
Yep, this was after Johnny went down to St. George. Coach Oslin got the job, and again through Quincy and Ray, helped me get that job at Snow College. So I was able to coach there for a couple of years, and that's really what I wanted to do, is coach college ball. I couldn't imagine doing anything else. Anyway, while we were there, we had our 2 kids at Snow College, and just seeing how much I was on the road recruiting and on road trips and all that stuff when I was just at Snow, I realized that that's not what I wanted to do. I didn't want to spend that much time away from my family. When my wife was pregnant with my son, I remember finding out that we were having a boy on a road trip in California with a bus full of stinky basketball players, which was a fun story. But I realized that I didn't want to miss all the first of my kids. So I guess my biggest regret is, and I don't regret it a whole lot because I had a lot of great experiences, but thinking that was the path that I wanted to go down, and it ended up not being the path that I wanted to go. But it helped me get where I am today. So I wouldn't really call it a regret, but maybe something that I would have changed earlier had I known. But yeah, I guess that's my answer. I don't know if that was the answer to the question that you asked, but
No, that's great.
That's what I'm thinking.
Perfect. You talked about all the different places you coached. So how did you then make that transition from coach to AD? Obviously you took over when Todd left.
Yeah. So when I left college basketball, it was one of those things where I didn't know exactly what was going to come next. I was coaching at Snow. I remember having a meeting with Coach Oslin. At this time, my kids were like 3 and 1, I think. Had a meeting with Coach Oslin telling him that I didn't think I was going to come back next year. And I didn't know what I was going to do next. So ended up moving back to my hometown in Huntington. Ended up getting the job as a recreation director here in Emery County. And I had that job for 4 years. And that's when my wife's the elementary school teacher. She taught over at Snow when we were over at Snow as well. And she taught elementary. She teaches now 2nd grade. And she talked me into getting into education. And it's something I'd never thought about, never wanted to teach or anything like that. Anyway, ended up getting a job as a health and PE teacher at a middle school in Price, Mount Harmon Middle School.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved every minute of it. I loved having the summers off with my kids. I loved having Christmas break with my kids and wife. And it was great. So anyway, long story short, I coached girls basketball over there while I was teaching, and really loved staying involved with athletics. So here at Emery High, I still lived over in Orangeville and would drive to Price, but really loved staying involved at Emery High. So I would take stats for the football team at home and away games. I'd be on the field and recording every play for Coach Faimalo. And for basketball, I was scorekeeper for the girls, and I would announce for the boys, and just loved being involved, and really got to know Stephen Gordon, our principal, through that. And then when Todd retired, my principal over at Mount Harmon, he's like, you need to apply for that job. You'd be great at it. And anyway, applied for it while I was at Mount Harmon. Like I said, I was coaching, and I was kind of the athletic director of our little middle school association there, and putting schedules together and things like that. So when this job came open, when Todd retired, my principal at Mount Harmon told me I need to apply for it. I applied, talked to Steven and Dean about it. And there was other really good applicants too. And I don't think anybody was more surprised than I was when I got that call saying I got it, and people may laugh at this, but I'm telling you what, Hutch, this is like where I am right now is like my dream job. I can't imagine leaving for any other job. I'm a small town guy. I love where I live. I love working with the student athletes. I'm close to my kids. I get to see all of their sports as the athletic director. But it's so anyway, that's how I got to where I am now. And I love every second of what I do.
Perfect. Let me ask you a follow-up that's not on the list of questions I gave you. I'm thinking about where you live, and I've been over the mountain into Sanpete County a couple of times, but I don't remember which town I left from, because isn't there either outside of Huntington or outside of Castledale, isn't there off to on the right side of the road like a golf course? It's got like a waterfall and stuff. Am I thinking of the right place?
Yeah, so that's in Farron, actually. That was my home
Farron,
course.
okay.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, Farron. So it's Millsite Reservoir is up there, and it's called Millsite Golf Course. But yeah, that's my home course. It was 9 holes when I was golfing there in high school. It's 18 now. And but yeah, they've got the spillway from the reservoir that comes over. And man, it's just, when I was in high school, it was ranked like one of the top 15 hardest holes in the state, and in the top 10 most beautiful holes. And when that spillway is going over, it's awesome, And so yeah, I still golf once in a while and go up there and watch our golf team compete. And yeah, great memory, Hutch.
Well, I was thinking about it just now. Not that anybody cares on the podcast, but I played 18 this morning, and the guys I golfed with, we share a business partnership down at Thanksgiving.
Oh, okay.
So we get like 40 times a year. I mean, if you had to pay the regular green fee, we couldn't afford to golf there, but it's dirt cheap. But
yeah,
I can't. I hesitate to tell you what I shot, because if you were a golfer from way back,
well,
let me just say it was in the 80s.
That's good. That's good.
Well,
okay.
that's good for me, because years ago it used to be in the 90s. So at least I'm
You're
somewhat
improving.
better.
Yeah.
Well, it depends on what day of the week it is. So
right.
I realize you've only been an AD not that long, but since you've started the job as AD, how has the profession of athletic administration changed just in the short time that you've been there?
So, like you said, this is only my second year, so I can speak from what I know so far and what I've heard of what's in the past. So right now, I know my job is a lot of scheduling, a lot of organization, basically, and my wife will tell you I'm perfect for this, because I'm a type A personality. Everything's got to be just so, and yeah. I kind of think you have to be that way, because you're going a million different directions, and everything from player eligibility, to making sure your coaches are certified, and game schedules and official schedules. And I here at Emery, we just got a new facility, an indoor facility here, and so I'm scheduling all the facilities that we have here, buses and all that stuff. So there's a lot to it. There's a lot more than I thought there was coming into it, and Todd Jess was our athletic director before I got here, and he didn't have, he was the athletic director, but there was no, as far as the district was concerned, there was no need for an athletic director. So Todd and Steven and Dean, our assistant principal, they kind of shared responsibilities of everything that needed to get done. And when Todd retired, Steven went to our school board and was like, I need help. Like I need somebody that's going to get paid to do all this extra stuff. And luckily the school board agreed and gave it. So right now I teach morning. I teach 2 health classes and 1 PE class in the morning. Then I have the afternoons for my athletic director stuff. And I know, and my principal knows, that that's not nearly enough time for everything that we need.
Absolutely.
So we're all working on getting that to be full-time soon. But there's just a lot more to it. I remember when I was growing up and stuff, I don't remember my coaches having to take any trainings and things like that. And there wasn't a register my athlete when I was growing up. I think I don't even remember getting a physical. We probably did, but I can't remember. But now, in order to protect us as a school and to protect the athletes, we want our coaches to be trained in all this stuff. So they know what's okay and what's not okay and how to respond if a kid has a concussion and all that stuff. So it's all good. It's all moving in the right direction, but it's a lot more detailed than it used to be years ago.
Oh, yes. And thank you for bringing up register my athlete. I've shared this on other podcasts. So I left Jordan, 10 years ago in probably a couple months. So it's June of 2013. After being the AD there for 30 years. And I had two filing cabinets at the back right of my, and the bottom two were freshmen. The top two were sophomores, and over the next one, juniors and seniors. I would get stacks of paper that were 3 and 4 feet high, just with all their eligibility back. And so even though I have not done it myself, I can't imagine. It's still a big job, but it's so much easier online than having those stacks of, because I get stacks of papers. I'd be at a volleyball game or a JV football game, and I was trying to get through my stack because, as you said, I was still teaching half the day. So
yeah. Well, and just talking to ADs, I was just curious more. So talking to a lot of the ADs down at the conference down in St. George and stuff, if they're full time, if what, and from what I could gather, all of the 4, 5, and 6A ADs are full time that I could tell that, people I talk to. And then when you get down to our level, like 3A, a lot of them are going full time, which is needed, I think. So there's just a lot, and it's just one of those jobs you don't want anything to slip through the cracks. If you do, it could be anything from a lawsuit or a missed game or something like that, where if your coach isn't certified and something happens, you're in big trouble. So it's one of those jobs that it requires a lot of attention, and it deserves a lot of attention.
And you don't somehow a kid's paperwork for academic All State gets left and you miss the deadline.
Yeah.
And I will admit it happened to me once, but only once.
Yeah.
Because I made sure that it didn't happen again. So you brought up the conference. So talk about, you're a brand new AD. So how do you know about the UIAAA? How do you know that you need to be at the conference? Obviously, maybe Todd talked to you.
Yeah. So Quincy is the one that told me about it. And then Stephen Gordon's also the one that told me about it, that I need to join. So I joined right away. And, one of the things that I found very interesting when I became an AD is I remember sitting in the stands and watching a bunch of high school games. Even, like I said, I was a basketball geek. So I'd go sit in the D event center and watch a bunch of games of people I had no idea who they were. And I remember seeing the ADs or the principals talk to each other and a rival school and think, oh man, that must be a little bit awkward. You're talking to somebody that's a rival of you. But since I've became the AD, the camaraderie of other ADs and just administration around, especially within our region that we meet with, once a month and talk to on the phone all the time, it's not like that at all. It's like a family, a brotherhood, you're always helping each other out. Like I said, Carbon is our biggest rival and we go at it all the time, and both counties come in for it. But if Ted needs something from me, the other day their soccer team was getting ready to play up in Ogden, and it's a turf field. So Ted called and asked if they could use our turf field to practice on, and of course I'm going to let him use it. And he told me the same thing. If I need anything from them or whatever, he'd be glad to help me out. So anyway, so the UIAAA was great. I went down for the first time to the conference last April. Took my wife down and took a couple of the classes, then sat in on all the other things. And talking
You
to
were
the
scared to death after you took one of the law classes, like
yeah.
everyone is.
When I first sat in on that, they said after this class you might want to reconsider being an athletic director. But it was eye-opening for sure. But one thing I learned is being down there, the 4, 5, and 6A schools, they're just as willing to help me out as the 3A schools that are in my region. And it's been awesome. And just having that friendship and knowing I can call Susan Hatch from Manti if I ever need anything, or Andy or from Bingham or anything. If I need any of those guys, they've given me their personal cell phone numbers, and they're more than willing to help. So I think in the grand scheme of things, we're all just trying to make high school athletics and our athletes, give them the best opportunity that we all can. So that conference was great. I plan on participating in more things. I didn't do the golf or the mountain biking or anything last time, and I want to get involved with that just so I can make more friends and meet more people around the state.
Perfect. That's that I'll make this comment. I've made this comment before when I've had other guests, but you go to a basketball clinic to hear, let's say it's Coach K or Bill Self at Kansas, and they'll stand up and they put on this great show for 30, 40 minutes, and they're sharing about 10% of the general stuff that they do, because those coaches, they're not going to give their stuff away.
Yeah.
But you go to an AD conference and, oh yeah, I got this. We've done this. Here, you want to copy my handbook? Copy it. Take what you want.
Yeah.
And that's a different mindset.
Yeah, no, it's been great. And talking about handbooks and things like that, like there's been a lot of times where I'm like, hey, asking these different athletic directors, what do you guys do for sponsorships or whatever? And man, they send me what they have, and it's made my job a lot easier. If I had to come up with all that stuff from scratch, it'd be a lot harder. So I really appreciate all those people willing to help.
Speak to the process of taking over as an athletic director. Because I think Emery's a legendary school, been there for a long time, and had some great athletes go through there. And of course, Todd was the first AD I knew for years and years. So is it just like big shoes to fill? It was a little bit scary. I mean, that's Emery's a big deal.
Yeah, it is big shoes to fill. Todd was here for a long time. I can't remember the amount of years that he was here, but he was obviously here when I came through, and he was here with the Sean Bradley years and stuff like that. So Todd, yeah, I mean, this last year, it was weird being here at the school and Todd not being here. He's been a staple of the school for so long.
Right.
It is big shoes to fill, but I wouldn't want it any other way. There's a lot of state championship banners up in our gym, and we've got a chance to win state in 3 different sports this fall. I think our volleyball, football, and cross country teams all have a really good chance at winning state. But with that, it does come a lot of responsibility, wanting to make sure that you put them in the best possible position to win a state championship. But I wouldn't want to be at somewhere where there was no expectations, and the bar was set so low. So I love having that challenge. And I told like all my coaches, the very first coaches meeting that I had with them is I want to make their job as easy as possible so they can focus on the X's and O's of the game. I don't want them worrying about if their bus is going to show up on time. I don't want them worrying about if a team remembers that we have a game tomorrow night or anything like that. I want to take as much off of their plate as I can so they can focus on the X's and O's, because that's what we hired them for. We didn't hire them to take care of scheduling and all that stuff. I want to hire a baseball coach that knows what he's doing with baseball and improve our players. So yeah, there are a lot of expectations, but I love it. I bring it on, I'm ready for it. And I would want to hang a lot more banners in our gym, in the future.
Right. Well, that's what you said about making life easier for your coaches. That's obviously one of the reasons you're a great AD, because
Okay.
the ADs that know that and know their coaches backwards and forwards and meet with them regularly, and try to take some of that administrative stuff off their plate, that's huge. So
I think that's really important. That's I remember when I was coaching, that was one of the biggest burdens, is all the stuff in the background that you had to worry about outside of coaching. And it's like, man, if I could just let my coaches focus on the game and the practices, that's my goal. And they've responded very well to it. And I've got great relationships with our coaches, and we've got a great group here. I'm excited.
What's one thing about being an athletic administrator that you would like to debunk? And this is what the public thinks, as opposed to this is what the job is really like.
Yeah. I would probably say that all we care about is sports. I do care about sports. That's my job. My job is to promote sports, but we care about these kids also. One of my favorite things so far is I've got athletes coming in my room before and after school just to chat, just because they like being around me and like to chat with me. And that's, I love that part of the job, and getting to know them and learning about their families and things like that. But I think one of the biggest myths is that I've heard is that an athletic director is not needed. Just because there's been so long that there was no athletic director. Each coach took care of their own sport, but it's such a different world that we live in now. Things have changed so much from when I was a kid that I'm telling you, they're needed. Like I said, there's lawsuits to be had if things aren't done right. There's injuries to be had if things aren't done right. There's just so many things that go into it that is all behind the scenes stuff. People see me in our people from our community see me a lot. Obviously, I'm at every sporting event, and I think a lot of them think that that's the basis of my job, is making sure that kids aren't out of hand in the student section, and make sure our referees get paid and things like that. But there's just so much more to it that people don't realize. And the people like our coaches and stuff like that, they realize, and our administration, they realize what we do and are appreciative of it. And I don't know, I guess that's the myth, that it's all just fun and games. There's a lot more in the background that goes on that people have no idea about.
Absolutely. Hats off and a shout out to your principal, Steve Gordon, because he gets it.
He does.
Well, and I've obviously worked with him for years as a member of the executive committee, because I sit on that also. But Steve Gordon knows, and all the good principals know, that a good AD is worth their weight in gold.
Oh yeah,
and a bad AD is just more headaches waiting to happen.
Yeah, right. And Steven's been my biggest supporter. We get along really. Obviously, we go on a lot of road trips together to region meetings and things like that. So we've gotten to know each other really well. And I told him at our football game the other night, I was like, you better not be going anywhere anytime soon, because I love working for him, and we get along well. And he's a sports guy. He gets the importance of it. There are a lot too that think that extracurricular activities are a waste of time and a waste of money and things like that. But man, you look at the data and the GPAs of those kids that are involved and things like that, and it's like, it's not even a question that it's important in the community. So anyway, yeah, Steven gets it, and I'm glad that he's my principal.
Perfect. What's the favorite part of your job, Jake?
I think my favorite part of the job is getting to know a lot of people in our community and really getting to know the athletes. Like I said, I have athletes in my room all the time, getting to know them. And then my wife laughs because, we're at a basketball game or a volleyball game. And I think PR is a big part of my job. So I'm always off talking to somebody. I'm talking to, sponsors or donors or other coaches or other athletic directors when they come and visit our school. And I really, really enjoy that. There's some people that they hate that and don't want to talk to people and hide in their office if they don't have to be out there. But I love that. I love talking to people and getting to know people from around the state. And, when my wife comes with me to these away basketball games or volleyball games, I'm always finding somebody that I know that I love, like want to talk to. And I love that part of it, going down to the UIAAA conference this spring. I'm going to know a lot more people than I did last year. And I just enjoy those relationships. And that's probably my favorite part of it, just getting to know people around the community and really getting to know the athletes in our school.
Perfect. We'll finish up with a couple of questions, Jake. The first one being, and I realize you're a newer AD, but I need Jake's 2 suggestions for a brand new AD. They need to follow Jake's suggestions in order for them to become a success. What would your 2 suggestions be?
Well, I think my number 1 suggestion would be is you better know from day one that it's not a 9-to-5 job. And with cell phones, it's a weekend, it's a Saturday and Sunday job too. There's things you're going to have to take care of. So you just, I don't know, just open your schedule up, because this is your life now, and like I said, some people love it and some people don't like it. I'm one of those that I love it. I don't mind taking care of things when it needs to be taken care of. And probably my other one is make sure you have a good organization system. Because like I said, you're organizing everything from game schedules to buses to officials to, athletes of who is and who isn't eligible and all that stuff. So you need to have some sort of good organization system to keep all that stuff straight. And, there's always stuff that I forget or pops into my head. So we'll be laying in bed at night and I'll grab my phone real quick and write something down in the notes that I forgot to do or got to add to my schedule for the next day. And so anyway, organization and understanding that you're never off the clock.
That is a great answer. And just so you know, I still do that.
Yeah.
Well, I'm obviously run the AD association, but I've been out of a high school for 10 years, but I'll wake up at 2 and get my phone. But it's mostly about, it gets worse once February and March comes, because it's right for the conference. So I just, I put that stuff down. So I laughed when you said that.
Yeah, and it's never over. We're finishing up our fall sports right now, and for the most part, our winter sports, the hay's in the barn. Schedules are made, all that stuff. So we're moving on to spring sports now. So, and then once we're into spring sports, we're going to be talking about summer camps and fall sports again. And it just is never ending. But you got to love it to do it well, and I love every second of it right now.
Perfect. Jake, we'll finish with this. What question should I have asked you that I failed to ask you?
Hutch, I think you've done a great job. One thing I love to talk about is my family. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about them. My wife's been teaching elementary school for, I think this is her 11th year. She's a 2nd grade teacher, and I don't know how she does it. When we help each other get ready for school in the summer, I help her get ready for elementary. She helps me get ready for high school. They're 2 completely different professions. They're not even the same. She's planning every minute of every day with those kids, and I plan 1 lesson and I'm good for 2 days because we got an A and B schedule, so it's not even the same. So shout out to her. She does a great job. My kids are, things I love spending time with them and watching them play sports. So an extra bonus to my job right now is they're both in high school. So I get to miss school and go to state tournaments and watch them. And it's part of my job. So anyway, I just love talking about them as well. So I really appreciate having me on.
Well, on that note, and thanks for sharing that story about your family. Appreciate it, Jake. On that note, that wraps it up for this edition of the UIAAA Connection. Again, our special guest today has been Jake Atwood, Director of Athletics at Emery High School. Jake, thanks so much for being on the podcast.
Thanks again. Appreciate it.
For our listeners, we hope you tune in again next week for another edition of the UIAAA Connection.